Out on my bike ride this morning, it occurred to me that poppies would make a great one-word haiku. Now, before I get into the poppy issue, let me introduce myself. I'm Patricia, for those of you visiting for the first time, but to everyone listening, welcome and thank you very much for coming along today to Series 4, Episode 11 of the Haiku Pea Podcast. I'll get back to poppies in a minute, but first let me tell you what I have for you today. We're definitely putting our thinking caps on because today Stanford M Forrester has very kindly joined me to try and get to grips with Yūgen. More of that shortly. And to end today, there's a little teeny-weeny snippet from Ben Gaa. Don't forget that we're writing haiku and senryu using selective realism this month. Email your submissions until the end of the deadline, which is the 20th of June 2021. This month's editing team, Jim and Robert, and Ron Craig, are waiting with bated breath to read what you're sending us. I like to give them a few poems each day, so keep them coming. And if you're not sure what our expectations are, have a look at the show notes or the YouTube presentation for podcast S4E11. It's all there, I promise. And something else, the new video prompt is up on YouTube. I'll link to it in the show notes, so do please go along, have a look, and put your haiku or senryu in the comments. And comment on the work of others. Let's encourage each other, like a great big virtual hug. Now a couple of thank yous. As always, I'm grateful for the coffees you buy me. And this month, I almost had enough coffee money to pay for the podcast's SoundCloud subscription. So that was really, really appreciated. Thank you all so much. And thank yous too to everyone who replies to my mailings or sends me little messages between podcasts. It's so nice to hear from you. So to get back to poppies. You could write poppies in blood red on a white page, but perhaps that's a tad hyperbolic. How about poppies, centre page, black on white, and this is why I think it works. Poppies are seasonal, so for me they evoke spring. They have impact, such a vivid, beautiful colour. And of course, they remind me of the poppies of the field of Flanders or Picardy, where the First World War was fought, and of the souls who gave their lives during the war. Of course, I'm pretty sure if I've thought of it, someone else has written it, but I can't find it in a cursory search. So tell me, what are your thoughts? And now for the main event. You may agree or disagree with what we discussed today. Either way, let me know. And of course, if you'd like to build on the ideas that we put forward today, send me emails. So let's hear from Stanford. Well, you know me by now. I get overexcited at the thought of talking to my haiku idols. And here I am again, having a Zoom chat with one of my haiku heroes, Stanford M Forrester, editor of Bottle Rockets. Yes. Hello, Stanford.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much for coming along and doing this.
So happy to be here.
Now, I can't believe that you don't know who he is, but for those of you who really don't, here's a little bit about him. Stanford M Forrester is a past president of the Haiku Society of America and founder and editor of Bottle Rockets, a collection of short verse. His poems have appeared in the anthology Haiku, published by Knopf in the Everyman's Library Pockets Poets series. It's quite a mouthful. And American Zen, a gathering of poets, published by Bottom Dog Press. In 2003, one of his haiku took first seat in the 57th Annual Basho Anthology Contest in Ueno, Japan, and another was a prize winner in the Haiku International Association's 6th Annual Haiku Contest in 2004. He served as a judge for the Japan Society in New York City, the Haiku Society of America, and the Haiku Poets of Northern California. And sometimes he goes by his haiku Sekiro, which means stone dew or dew on a stone. Have I said that right, Stanford?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So in a wee while, we're going to talk Yūgen. But as you know, when I have a guest, I like to read you some of their work. So let's start with this one. Depression. Summer and unemployment, both running out. Depression. Summer and unemployment, both running out. Now, for me, it spoke to me of the time when I was at university, had no money, and the unemployment situation was pretty poor. So some years I'd get work and some years I wouldn't. But you know, the end of summer when you have to go back to college or university or school, and those fun days of playing tennis or swimming or whatever you've been doing are over, and the unemployment money is running out. It's just very depressing. So that evokes wonderful, well, maybe not wonderful memories for me, but memories anyway. And I wondered, Stanford, where does it come from in your life?
Well, this was a fairly recent poem written, obviously at this time during the COVID. I've been in publishing for like 30 years. I started at Yale University Press. I did about 8 years there, and then I've been running Bottle Rockets Press since then. But that was always considered my first job. But I had two other side jobs, one working in a bookstore and one working at this prep school, which decided to lay me off after 16 years.
Oh.
So I've lost two jobs within a year period of time. And I'm actually quite happy because what it's done is it's finally letting me, even though I've always given 100% to haiku, now it's 100% without the other 50 or 75% of other things.
So here's another one. Tea ceremony. It begins and ends with an empty cup. Tea ceremony. It begins and ends with an empty cup.
This poem could be a death poem.
Oh.
No, in a positive way. I mean, death poems are not negative. I mean, they, the Japanese tradition. There's a good book, I think, by Hoffman on Japanese death poems.
Oh.
The beauty of this is the understanding of life, and it's also a play on the idea of the cup half empty, the cup half full. It's also a play on what is, I think, relativism or rationalism, where it's not the cup. I mean, it's not what's in the cup, it's the cup itself. But then you also have a play too on Diogenes, the Greek philosopher, who was basically trying to live as simple life as possible. And then he was down by the river one day and he saw a little boy cupping his hands, drinking the water. And he was so mad at himself because he hadn't thought of that, he threw the cup away. But of course, you don't want to be drinking coffee or tea out of your hand. And the idea is too the futility of things, where the ceremony is kind of like the life, tea ceremony. That is our life. It begins and ends with an empty cup. Mm-hmm. So to understand, those are all natural things, that there has to be a beginning in one sense and there has to be an end. But it's a seamless, and if you know about it and understand it, that's what we need to do.
You see, to me, it was just such it's this very simple idea. It's one of those poems that I love, that it makes me think, it's like a light bulb going off in your head, and, poet's envy again. I wish I'd written it because it's just such a simple idea, but it's just wonderful, a wonderful clarity. We're doing Yūgen here today. I thought it also had a modern take maybe on that, but I thought perhaps maybe I'd leave that for later because I'm getting ahead of myself here, and we should maybe go on to try and define Yūgen. Before we go on, I think you made a good point when we were discussing things a little bit earlier, Stanford, that we should put a disclaimer in here. So you put it so eloquently last time. Could you go for the disclaimer again, please?
Sure. I have an extensive library of haiku books, and I used to work at Yale Press, so I had access to the Yale Library, which is humongous. It's the size of small cities, Mm-hmm. And the point is that Yūgen, like many other things like haiku and senryu and ideas and forms or things, have changed throughout the years, throughout the centuries. So it's it's very hard when we discuss Yūgen, we are doing it here in an extremely general way, because there's different periods of time where it had different aspects, or lost aspects, gained aspects. And also depending what definition you read from, where an author is coming from. If it's I guess Yūgen is a major component of no theater. So you might get a slight bit definition, or they might be looking at Yūgen a different way for theater than they might be looking for Yūgen, let's say, in poetry.
Yeah.
It's basically virtually impossible for us to cover this in one podcast. Again, we need a symposium, probably Oxford, Cambridge, or Harvard, or Yale, and go for a week or two. And then we would probably agree on a few things and probably not on the most. And then everyone would write a paper.
Hey, well, they'll just have to make do with us two today. But do you remember when we started thinking about doing this today, what you said to me about defining Yūgen?
Yes, it's my guess it's pretty tough. And we have some definitions that we'll talk about. And, I look at this in the same way. It's like you need a stepping stone to kind of get started, but it's the same thing with haiku. Is definitions are always argued. That's why there's hundreds or maybe thousands of different poetry groups in Japan, because they all have a different definition. There's no definitive definition of haiku. It does not exist. And my guess would be the same with Yūgen or even Zen. How do you describe Zen? It's just, you have to get the feel for it. It's like, again, like if you wanted to listen to a certain type of music, and it would be hard to describe, I would just give that person 10 hours worth of CDs or records and say, listen to this. This is how you're gonna. And I think that's, our approach here is giving a few examples and just kind of, again, exploring.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we've both done, as you said, a humongous amount of reading for today. And we've looked at the evolution of the ideas, and we've looked at various definitions. And I have to tell you, Stanford, that at one time I think, oh, I've cracked it. I know what I'm talking about now. And then all of a sudden it slips through my fingers and it's gone again.
Absolutely.
So I think people, as you said in the disclaimer, this is a very general broad look at things. People some people will agree with us, some people will disagree with us, but it's out there to put some ideas into people's heads. And
I also think too that Yūgen, like any tool in a poet's toolbox, this is every poet is gonna, if a poet even uses it, okay, it's a tool, so it doesn't mean it has to be in every single poem.
Yeah.
But also, depending on the style of the poet, we have to think about what degree are they using Yūgen. Is it heavily filled? Is it subtly filled? What aspect of Yūgen does each poet choose? And then we have to think of us again as the reader of poetry. Is haiku poets are generally, we've been trained or learned how to be aware of the subtleties in life. That's why we're poets. We see things other people don't see. And it's a very common, for example, idea in Jodo Shinshu, which is Pure Land Japanese Buddhism, where they say there's this power above us. This is Yūgen all the way. A power above us, it's always there. But it's almost like we have a boat and we have a sail, and the power is the wind all around us. If we don't hoist the sail, we don't tap into that energy or that power. So as haiku poets, that's what we need to be aware when we read, and know that it's a cosmology, an Asian cosmology. So if we do use Yūgen, which you and I had talked about in our own stuff, I mean, I was a practicing Buddhist for 30 years. So I have some stuff with Buddhas in it, because I went to a Buddhist temple for 30 years, and I mean, I'd gone to another temple before that even, But so our Yūgen could maybe be a different type, not based on the Shinto, the Buddhist, the Taoist, the shamanistic thought groups in Asia, but it could be what we talk about, maybe some stuff in Catholicism, right, with the mystery of the Holy Trinity. I'm not a Christian, so I don't know. But we have in the West our aspects, or maybe like an old amusement park, right, in Pier. I could, in England, I remember going there. That had a lot of Yūgen of the past, and
yes.
like even like these old arcade, you can write about arcade machines. They have the one with the gypsy fortune teller. right? There's Yūgen right there. Drop a quarter in or whatever, how many euros to get your fortune from a mechanical gypsy. That's Yūgen.
I think you have actually got some definition for us, haven't you, Stanford?
So I want to read the Alan Watts one first, which is much shorter, or about Alan Watts and Yūgen. Yūgen is not simply an aesthetic ideal to be striven for in art, but here's the key, should be ideally experienced and embodied in one's life. That's really important. Yūgen means eliciting psycho-spiritual well-being through an awareness of the mysterious depths of existence, and implies being deeply moved to the core of one's being without quite knowing why.
Mm.
So I look at it too as a transition between the realms, of the 6 realms of Buddhism. When you start looking to something mystery, it's a seamless transition. It's not like a Disney movie. There's the Wicked Witch, or like a Shakespeare with the 3 witches and Macbeth. It's more. It's to the point where, like, did I see that? Or you start questioning yourself, and that could be in a positive. It doesn't, again, it doesn't have to be, the techniques or like, rain, mist, cloudy, dusk, dawn, where the Twilight Zone, Rod Serling's TV show. That's one aspect, but then there's also the wonderment, the opposite. Again, Yūgen, I believe, is a two-sided coin from what I gather. So you have this wonderment of light, the sky, the birds doing a certain thing. That's a positive wonderment. That's more on the light side of the force, compared to the darker side, which would be more of focusing on the animal realm, the ghost realm, and the hell realm. So then I have the DT Suzuki, which definition, which is a little bit more extensive. And just to let you know, this I think would definitely apply in a great way towards haiku, because DT Suzuki was best friends with R.H. Blythe. They're buried back to back in Japan in a temple inside Kamakura, which I visited, and they were on the same wavelength about a lot of aspects of Zen. So the definition goes by DT Suzuki: Yūgen is a compound word, each part yu and gen, meaning cloudy impenetrability, and the combination means obscurity, unknowability, mystery, beyond intellectual calculability. Wow, long words here.
Yeah.
But not utter darkness. Okay, that's the key, but not utter darkness. An object so designated is not subject to a dialectical analysis or to a clear-cut definition. It is not at all presentable to our sense intellect as this or that, but this does not mean that the object is altogether beyond the reach of human experience. And then it keeps on going. We feel its present, its secret message being transmitted through the darkness, however impenetrable to the intellect. The feeling is all in all. Cloudiness or obscurity or indefinability is indeed characteristic if we took characteristic of the feeling, but it would be a great mistake if we took the cloudiness for something experientially valueless or devoid of significance to our daily life. And that's the key again, daily life, because that's what haiku poets do. We celebrate and we live in the ordinary, in the daily life. But again, it's our skill to see. And then he concludes, we must remember that reality, or the source of all things, is to the human understanding an unknown quantity, but that we can feel it in a most concrete way.
I think that's another key thing there, the concrete way. And I had a couple more to add to this. And I'll just say that if somebody wants to read these definitions, I'll put them in the show notes so you can have a read and fully think about them, because they do. I mean, they're not the simplest of ideas.
Jane Reichold has one that's still kind of like, if you do a Google, that'll pop up because it's been there for the longest. Her definition, which is very short, and I'm not crazy about it, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
But I think what it does, though, it gives you an idea like that she uses, and I think this is more of the wonderment example, not, she calls it mystery, but it's like, she says, a woman with a beautiful, I don't know if she said beautiful, but a woman with a fan covering her face and you could only see her eyes is Yūgen. A woman with a mud mask on her face is not Yūgen.
Yeah, I remember that one now. Yes,
Yeah.
she does. Got another one that sort of backs up what Suzuki was saying, which says Yūgen does not, as sometimes been supposed, have to do with some other world beyond this one, but rather with the depth of the world we live in as we experience it through our cultivated imagination. It's an awareness of the universe that triggers emotional responses too deep and mysterious for words. And I think that, to me, that's another important element, that when we're using this tool in our toolbox, it's another way to elicit emotion in our reader.
Yes.
As well. And then I had a very short one that I came across. I came across it at the very last minute this morning by Robert D. Wilson. And it struck home with me because it was it's short and sweet, and it helps me to grasp the concept. And he said, Yūgen is like an echo after the clang of a brass bell. I thought, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can live with that one. I can work with that. It's quite simple. Anyway, as you said when you were talking about music, we wanted to talk about a few examples of poetry, which we hoped would clarify the whole idea, or the general idea that we were talking about. Stanford, this is one of yours. Forgotten temple, a yellow flower offers itself. Forgotten temple, a yellow flower offers itself. Stanford, why did you want to put this one in?
So I wrote that one in 2004 when I was in Greece visiting HF Noyes, and I had gone to the Oracle of Delphi, and when we got off the tour bus, I started walking around. Everyone immediately went up to the main ruins, and I was walking around to the side, and I found this tiny temple, and it could have been a shrine, I don't know, but it was still standing partially. And I had thought about, even this idea, again, a seamless transition between humans and flowers or the natural world, that though the temple no longer had humans, nature was still part of it, and it was giving its own offering. Very, very much, I think, in the transcendental way, that it keeps on going. So it was just a beautiful little, and it could apply, it's like when I was in Greece, I basically put on my Japanese mind of the idea of multiple gods, Shinto gods, because they have a god for everything, as the Greeks do.
Yes.
And so I just really enjoyed, and I really got into, mindfully in thinking about the depths of the ancient Greek life and the gods. And it was and again, it's that axial period that the Greeks and the Japanese, like if I said to you, this is slightly off, you can never take your feet out of this, you can never put your feet in the same river twice. You can never put your feet into the same river twice. Sounds very Zen. And it's not, it's Greek, it's Heraclitus.
Oh.
So, bada bing, it was at the same time, just in a different country. So that kind of had my mind of the Shinto, the Japanese ideas too. And then nature takes over, that there is a power of nature, that we are not, again, the interdependence of all beings in Buddhism, that major foundation pillar of thought.
Yeah. I think the way you composed it, if you look at the craft, from my point of view as the non-poet here, just reading it and trying to look at the Yūgen idea, it's got grace and beauty, which we're looking for as well, hasn't it? And it's got a slight, if you're looking for the mystery and the eeriness, you've got that in the idea of the forgotten temple, because it's not one of the main big blingy temples that you would go and see. And then I think the juxtaposition with the yellow
flower
offering itself, it's just a beautiful, strong juxtaposition.
And it was filled with light when I was there, so the buildings were marble, so they were white,
Yes.
And with the yellow flower. And again, it's like the wonderment too. I mean, again, when the baby Buddha you always see that statue in all the museums. He's pointing with one finger up in the air, and he's pointing with one finger down.
Yes.
So the sky and the earth.
Yes.
And you have that the flower receiving the sun.
Mm-hmm. And the idea of the offering, which is also sort of a semi-religious idea of the offering. Yeah,
Sure.
a beautiful piece of work. Temple ruins, pieces of a Buddha still praying. Temple ruins, pieces of a Buddha still praying. Tell us a bit about that one then.
This one, I had originally seen a photograph that was put next to a poem by Octavio Paz, who was a Nobel Prize winning poet. He was Mexican, and he was, I think at one time, in like a lot of poets, they were ambassadors. They worked in the foreign service. He was ambassador to India. And he was also an ambassador to maybe Japan at one point, or traveled to Japan. But he had written a poem about Buddhas in ruins. And I just thought the idea is, in the end, what Buddha said was, he said that I will not be able to help you. And Jesus said the same thing. I will not help you. Buddha will not help you. It's our teachings that will help you. Mm-hmm. So in this sense, that the Buddha, the impermanence of the Buddha really doesn't matter, but the idea of what he had taught. And that's to me kind of like what the hands are still there, the ruins, but the hands are still there, they're praying. That kind of represents that the spirit is not broken, and and everything is, again, impermanent. So the Buddha was just a visual mm-hmm. to teach us that. And then the Buddha is actually using itself, if you want to personify that Buddha into a god or deify that statue, that look, even when I am in pieces, the spirit is still whole.
Yeah. And I think something else I got from the readings we've been doing is that Yūgen will express some form of beauty. It will take the ordinary and elevate it, like the yellow mm-hmm. flower in the previous one, and in this case the broken Buddha. And it doesn't have to be something beautiful. So your yellow flower could have been a weed.
Yes,
it would have been
most
fine.
Likely it was.
It probably was, yeah. This Buddha is broken and lying in pieces, so it's not the beautiful piece of work it once was. It's a ruin of what it was, and yet the poem has elevated it into something extraordinary as well.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school studying Spanish literature, we had talked about ruins, mm-hmm. and ruins evoke the past. So when you have a poem with ruins in it, you're actually, even though it's a haiku moment, it's in the now, your mind wants to, and it should like hit another level. Like in the United States, we had the poets the painters around the same time as the Transcendentalists, the Hudson Valley or Hudson River painters. They would do two paintings. They would go to Europe and paint a castle in ruins. Mm-hmm. Would be one painting with the landscape and everything. And then they would do a second painting with the same exact landscape, and then with the building as if it were new back in the ancient times. So you're comparing the two uh-huh. at the same time. And that's what kind of, when we see ruins, our mind goes to what was in the past. It gives us an idea, makes us remember our humanity and that time, the idea of time and impermanence. Yes. By looking at that. But it's also, there's also the beauty, the rustic beauty too.
Yeah, absolutely. But it took me back, when I read this, it took me to Cambodia, and this could have been about Angkor Wat, and it's beautiful, and even though it's absolutely swamped with tourists, it still has the element of spirituality hasn't been lost. Not yet, anyway. Who knows what will happen in the future. So that was beautiful. And then I've got another one I'm going to share, but it's not one of yours this time. This one is from Jackie Pierce. She won the 3rd prize Martin Lucas Haiku Award in 2020, and it's from Presence at issues 69. It's a different take, shall we say. So let's hear it. Hide and seek, I disappear into the sound of rain. Hide and seek, I disappear into the sound of rain.
Yes, that's a beautiful poem. And the Yūgen in there, again, is, to me, this is like it's like multiple Yūgen in the sense that it keeps seamlessly going up and back again. Like in some poems, it's just like the rain that acts as, you're moving away the curtain or going through it. I mean, there's a passage, right, from one realm into the next. And that's why, like the Jizo we were talking about before, who was the, bodhisattva for traveling and is put on the road. But, always the seamless transition and the mist, the rain. Yeah, that's a wonderful poem.
Yes, you've hit it. I mean, that's what it was for me. The mist of the rain took me straight into that sort of Yūgen sphere. Jackie has not chosen, a wonderful, beautiful vision. It's the rain. Rain is quite miserable sometimes, and yet she's elevated it.
And she also hide and seek. I disappear into the sound of the rain, and it could very well be the way she disappears is because now she's wet.
Yeah, true.
This
is true.
So there's a physical transition too. And I think that's really important that we lose that so much. Like that's why I think Santoka is such a wonderful poet, because his stuff is, if you're reading about his travels, you have to, like when we read about rain now, 9 out of 10 times we're probably sitting out inside watching the rain from the window, compared to the poet who is actually physically getting wet, might not have a change of clothes, might be walking. So they're going to get soggy and itchy, and they could get cold or sick. That's what we need to feel when we read. I mean, that's part of it. But when she gets wet, because it's hide and seek into the sound of rain, now the rain is more.
Yeah.
I mean, she's coming inside out now instead of outside in.
Yeah, a terrific job there, Jackie. Thank you. So our last example today is from Stanford again, and it's morning light, all the stone Buddhas robed in gold. Morning light, all the stone Buddhas robed in gold.
Yeah, I wrote this one in Tokyo at Zojoji Temple. That one was filled, that complex, with Jizos, but it was also filled with the stone Buddhas. Again, the Yūgen to me is this wonderment. We always see the stone Buddhas, but now, the sun is rising. It's it's a wonderment poem, but it's like to see all of a sudden now we're seeing past the veil. They're robed in gold. They have that beautiful yellow instead of just rags. But the beauty of it, and the supernatural maybe, or wonderment again, is that it's of light. So it's not permanent, like the Buddha is not permanent. They take it off at the end of the day, they put it back on in the morning. That's another version of that poem, I guess,
I guess so. And again, much like some of the others, there is that godlike religious atmosphere about it. And in the play of the morning light and the gold, I don't think you need to see it. I've seen it again in temples in Thailand, but there is a great, again, state of beauty and godlike presence when you see these things, regardless of the number of tourists that are around snapping it. It's
Sure.
just beautiful. And so I really enjoyed that poem. Thank you, Stanford. So now we've given the examples, we've had a bash at defining it. Do you have any tips for somebody who would be writing using this part of their toolkit?
I would say to, again, get a feeling first, read the classical ones, to give yourself a background and understand that, again, they're coming from a Buddhist, they're coming from a different set of aesthetic values, and we probably have, or we do have, maybe it's not as defined in the West, our own, our own Yūgen. I mean, I think it's okay to be, and I'm a big proponent of writing about Asian things if you've experienced them, but not necessarily, if you haven't experienced them, there's still enough here. And, writing again, it's your day. It's the haiku is daily. It's our part of our daily life. So it's, find the huge, I mean, it could be about like in the United States where the American Indians once were.
Mm-hmm.
It could be finding an arrowhead, or in, even like, how we, the Japanese have cicadas. That's very Yūgen-like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the shell is left, but the cicada is gone.
Yeah.
We have our 17-year cicadas here, which actually this year is coming to the East Coast.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to that. I remember as a child in New York City, in Staten Island, the whole street covered completely, like you could not see the street. It was crazy.
Wow.
But so, we have our own set of Yūgens from our own, of course, there's a lot of poets from India. They have definitely their own more Yūgen than probably anybody, Explore your own. And it could be, again, very subtly used. It depends on what degree and what type of, it could be more on the hyperbole side of things, or it could be very, very subtle.
So I thank you so much for coming along and helping me grasp at the idea of Yūgen. Thanks so much, Stanford. But before you go, I have some questions for you, just a couple, if you don't mind, because I know you have got a beautiful printing press of your own at home. I don't know. Do you use that press for bottle rockets, or
no? I would kill myself if I had to use it for bottle rockets. I have a small antique Kelsey printing press. It's probably like 70, 80 years old. And it actually was manufactured not that far from me. I'm living in the printing press capital of the West. New England was huge because we had the paper mills in Maine. The paper would come down in Massachusetts and Connecticut. But so I do use that for some broadsides, and I do small letterpress books. But it's so expensive and time that I usually don't push that. But I do, as we had talked about, I do a lot of freelance work. I've edited and helped. I've done, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 freelance books for people that want to have their poetry out. If
people want to contact you, I noticed that you have these services on your website, so they can contact you through the website on that one. But they can also buy your books on your website too, which are beautiful.
They can. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that the new cat anthology just came out literally like a few days ago. So that's been mailed out to the contributors, and I'll be posting that on the website. I'll put the website details on the show notes so people can check in and have a look at that too. I've read your book, so I would definitely recommend people to go ahead and buy them. And don't forget, of course, that you can also submit to Bottle Rockets. Read the submission guidelines carefully, as you should do for any organization or any journal, really. I think it's worth reading your submission guidelines just because they're a great set of guidelines. I enjoyed reading them. It's a great little journal. Well, not little journal. It's an old journal by now. I've seen what works. I've had that privilege, that experience of after 22 years, seeing what works in the journal and what doesn't. You never want to send a submission into some place that you know nothing about. I'm sure you'll be back at Stanford because it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Absolutely. And thanks for helping me get a bit of a grasp on it. And I would say to people, don't worry too much. We're just beginning. We're looking at this in general terms, and we're going to grow in this together. So thank you so much for helping us grow, Stanford. Okay. Thank you.
So that's our presentation on Yūgen for now. It's hard, and we've really only just scratched the surface. So I thought I'd give you some of my takeaways from today, to give you an idea what the editing team will be looking for when it comes to writing for the topic. Stanford said if you visit temples, if you've been to the East, write about temples, write about the mysticism, the Zen of the East, but don't try imagining it. Go for something closer to home. Write about something ordinary, but highlight the extraordinary, a bit like Stanford's Little Yellow Flower. Write about something that's moved you, because it will surely connect emotionally with your reader. And of course, show your reader, don't tell them. Aim for something deep and mysterious, or something which expresses wonderment. Now, how do you get that feeling? How do you elicit that feeling of Yūgen? Here's some more ideas. Write about something of the past. You can go way back in history, to the ancient times, to your childhood, or really just something that happened to you not so long ago. But something that's deep and meaningful. You could also write about the subtle interchanging of realms, as Stanford did in his poetry. Choose words carefully which elicit that sense of darkness or mystery, grace or beauty. Express the beauty in the ordinary. And remember, we're haiku poets, so our poems always take place in the present. So that's almost it for today. One last reminder that the topic for this month, June 2021, is selective realism. Any haiku or senryu you like, just use that tool from your toolbox to write them. I accept emails only, and I'm very, very strict on the deadline. Next time on the podcast, your beautiful poems written to include Kigo. Do come along. I think you're going to enjoy it. And now, I'll leave you with a little snippet from Ben Gaa. Until next time, keep writing.
To get to those gift poems that come out perfectly right, you know, you'd have to write like, I don't know what the number of how many bad ones it seems like you're working on before the other thing just plops out of the sky right in the middle of where you're trying to work on something else. It's like, where did you come from? I don't even know where this happened, but there it is and it's perfect. But those don't just happen. You can't just, as a poet, just sit around all day and just think, oh, I'm just going to write one poem when I'm inspired, and that one poem, that one draft is going to be perfect. No, it doesn't work that way.
If you think I've left anything out of the show notes, or I need to amend something, send me an email, let me know. Ciao!